Dino Elise. I'm not here to help people be rich. If you're just joining me, go ahead and slow down. Take a breath. Clear your space. If you're open to receive, happy Ostara, blessed spring equinox. Hi, Haley. Eclectic Goddess, blessed be, sister. Tap the heart button, share. I just hopped on a few moments ago, so thank you for being here every week. So I've been thinking this morning, and I've just been thinking about continuing to rise and continuing to grow, even though things aren't perfect in your life or in any of our lives right now. And even when things seem like they're chaos, that sometimes we get a bit exhausted and kind of want to throw our hands up and just give up. And I know for myself, and I know other people have said they've had it too, so I'm kind of teetering between, is this just me, or is this collective? Is this the Schumann resonance? What is it? But since the beginning of March, I've been struggling with these headaches, and that's common for a health condition I'm working with. So I kind of just like, okay, it has to do with that, and I'm waiting to get in to my doctor. But also I'm hearing so many other people saying they're having headaches right now and health issues. And I was just thinking about the eclipse season that we just came out of, and how there was like that Pisces energy, that Virgo full moon, and that brings up health stuff. And I think that what we need to remember right now is that the times we're living in and the energy that is on the planet right now is wild, and it's gonna affect us to some extent, and yet we can continue to rise. So I was thinking about this oil I make, and I probably shouldn't talk about it because I don't believe I have any on my website right now, but it's called Desert Rose. And I was just thinking about how I named that oil was because the desert rose blooms even under the most harshest conditions. And then I was looking in my backyard at my rose bush over by my fairy garden. I just have one over there, and I haven't watered it all winter. And it's already starting to re-blossom, and we haven't gotten a winter here. And so I was just thinking about us humans and how our tendency sometimes is to just disconnect and throw our hands up and throw ourselves in bed or immerse ourselves in something that gets our mind off of what's really bothering us, right? And in these times, I believe we're learning. We're really learning to be able to navigate what some big stuff, some big energetic truths that have been unveiled. And we're figuring out how to be with those things. And those things are triggering the child within us. Hi, Erin. And when I say, and I wonder how you guys feel this, but this is the way I feel it. When we are triggered by something, oftentimes, more than not always, but oftentimes when we're triggered, what is being triggered is the child within us. And what's interesting about that child being triggered is often we want to blame the trigger to protect the child, but the child within us, but that doesn't really heal anything. That doesn't help us feel any better. And to feel better, we need to hold ourselves in whatever it is that we went through. And holding ourselves looks like taking time to journal, to acknowledge what you're feeling, what you're moving through, how that is affecting you. And yet, underneath that child, and this is what I'm getting at, underneath that child within you that is triggered, there is the child that holds all of your inner brilliance, that passion deep within you that actually is guiding you on all the different ways that your purpose shows up in this lifetime. And I believe that's the key to what is happening right now is many of us chose to come back here at this time because of all the other lifetimes that we have lived through that were challenging, that we said, hey, we are strong enough. I am strong enough. I have learned enough through all these other lifetimes that I'm ready to come back into this lifetime and experience some really challenging things, because those challenging things I already know somewhere in me, not consciously, right? Because we're knowing this from a past life, but somewhere in me, I know how to navigate this. I've just got to get my feet under me. And I'm realizing right now, for me, what's most important is what I did when I first got on here is slowing down and taking a breath. Because I think none of us are immune to kind of wanting to disconnect and do whatever it is that we do to disconnect. And I'm not saying that we need to be 100% immersed in social media or the toxic crap that we're being exposed to. However, we need to be aware of what's going on so that in our everyday lives, we can show up as that example of whatever it is, whoever it is you find yourself to be in this life. And right now, we're blooming. We're all the desert rose, right? We're blooming under the harshest circumstances where there's no water. Just like I told you here where I live, we've had no snow, barely any rain. I think the only snow we got was a flurry, just enough to cover the ground, and that's not normal for where I live. And yet I've just kind of let my fairy garden in the side of my yard kind of go this winter. And I haven't really been out there, which is interesting because normally in the winter, if I don't go out there, it's because it's too cold. But it really hasn't been too cold. So I've been asking myself, why am I not going over there? So I went over there and my husband did some work for me last weekend. What was really interesting is I've been growing these foxglove plants, and they're probably this big for over a year. And I planted them all near this like white little picket fence, and my husband's like, I don't think those are gonna grow, and I'm like, but they're still alive. Like, I've never had something just not grow and stay alive. And so I've been watching over the last few weeks. My husband and I went out there, and he picked some weeds, and I had him go around the foxglove, and he dug out some water troughed areas, and just tried to bring some life to them. And so I started watering them this last week, and they, after a year and a half, went from like this big to like this big all of a sudden. And the thing is I guess looking at them yesterday, I was like, I guess I just never gave up on you. And what's interesting about them is, before I planted them, I had all these mice that were on my side yard, and I let them live over there for quite a while. But one of the mice gave birth, and the babies were all deceased in my garden one day, and so I took them and buried them under where the foxglove now is. And so every time I went out there for the longest time, I had the saddest feeling. And I would think of those mice under there and just wonder why they had died. I was worried maybe my husband killed them accidentally when he like turned up the soil for me. And then it dawned on me yesterday when I was out there looking at the roses, and I looked back at the foxglove, and I realized this last week I stopped having that feeling of like sadness every time I looked at them. And I can't help but wonder if maybe they grew this last week and doubled in size finally after all this time, because I stopped paying attention or bringing energy to the sadness around the mice that I had buried under there before we planted those in. So it's just like, I guess I'm just explaining to you guys how my thought processes work and I go about my everyday life. I'm a house witch. I'm home most of the time. My craft is all here in my home. I'm very much a homebody, and my home is my sanctuary. And so everything that happens here in my home, outside of my home, to me is all part of my life being a spell in motion. There's nothing that doesn't mean something. And so I'm always processing these things. And it somehow spiraled me back to how we can bloom under the harshest of circumstances, and how my rose bush is over there that I forgot to water all winter, and it's actually already starting to bloom. And then these foxglove, I completely ignored all winter as well, and we gave them just the tiniest bit of love, and I finally let go of the sadness, and boom, they grew. And I was just thinking about how that is us. That's been my life, is there's been these harshest circumstances, and yet somehow I always hit a point where I recognize, oh, like, I actually am strong enough to get through this. I don't have to keep playing the story out of the victim. I don't have to keep being the one who identifies as, I have anxiety, I have depression, I have, there are many conditions that we're diagnosed with over the years. And one of my diagnoses is a genetic condition that, I'm born with different genes than most people are born with. Mine, when I get stressed, repeat themselves over and over again. Most people just have a pair. I've got 12,000, and so it makes these things start happening in my body. And it is always like, I guess that's why my name is Harmony, and that's not a name I gave myself. My parents named me that, which is odd because they grew up, a niece was pointing this out to me this week, like my parents grew up in the age of the hippies, loved the Beatles, were at Jimi Hendrix concerts, and somehow they grew old and became conservative. I mean, they even named their daughter Harmony. My other sisters have regular names, and I can't help but even looking back at that, I'm like, at some point, something changed. And then along came Jennifer, Melinda, and Ricky, but Harmony Rose, this, I guess, kind of speaks to the hippie age that they were at one point. And, I know we're all just doing our best to get by, but there is, I don't know if that's you, but I do go into those times where I kind of throw my hands up, and I'm like, it seems like that time always precedes the finally bursting through the like, okay, I got this. Like, I throw my hands up and give up, and then something happens. I can even look back in my life to when I was trying to get pregnant. What 17-year-old is trying to get pregnant? One who grew up Mormon and got married at 17 and starts taking fertility pills because I was not getting pregnant. And it's funny because the month I stopped taking those fertility pills is the month I got pregnant all those years ago. So there is this common thread in my life of balancing that trying and continuing to thrive even under harsh circumstances, but also letting go. And I feel like that's where we're at as a collective right now, as we're figuring out how to care for ourselves. We're figuring out just how much that part of our psyche that is the inner child is important to actually witchcraft in general. That what we're seeing online right now is a lot of spells being shared. And I want to preface this so you're not holding on to just one aspect of what I'm saying. And witchcraft is doing what we call spells, but I believe there was a time where the spells were really needed in the craft. And I think right now it's not the spells that are needed in the craft. It is the healing of one's self, because we are not going to be able to show up and continue to show up and rise and bloom under these circumstances that we're all living through worldwide. For a moment last year, I found myself always saying the US is going through this. But I feel like within the first few months of this year, what we've realized is that it's not just the US. This is a global problem we're dealing with, and we've been dealing with it since far before the burning times. But how the burning times happened was exactly what we're finding now is happening on our planet. And it's our society as a whole across the US. And if as a collective, everyone really started focusing on their own mental and emotional well-being and care to the point where we stopped having that reactivity where we're wanting to quickly curse someone, quickly hex someone, quickly do a justice spell on someone before we actually, and what's that doing? So before I go forward, Spirit's like, hold on. What that is doing when you have that reactivity to spell work is that the reactivity is not coming from an energetic good place, I'm going to call it. It's coming from an energetic, toxic projection. And because it's coming from that toxic projection, what's happening is the energy that you are feeding by doing that spell is feeding the energy you don't want more of. It's feeding the negative energy, because the toxicity and the unhealed energy is very different than someone who has had some righteous rage and funneled that, moved that rage through their body and through their psyche in a healthy way, and then decided if they needed to take action with a spell. Now, the thing about a witch that we have seemed to have forgotten, because everyone's so enamored by the spell jars and the spells that we're seeing online, is that the oldest of witches that we have is the Witch of Endor. And the Witch of Endor, of course, she's biblical. I hate that. I always tell you guys I hate that the first witch we have recorded is biblical, but she was actually employed by a king to bring him psychic messages. So she was working as a seer or an oracle. And that all of the people before the conversion were pagan, meaning all of the people were practicing what we now see as witchcraft. And so it's important that when we are looking at the craft and how we are approaching our craft, that we understand folk magic is actually pagan everyday life. And pagan, not meaning pagan as the modern day definition of pagan. And I'm always explaining that to people. The modern day definition of paganism would be Wicca, Themalism, Freemasonry, something like that, right? But the thing is that words take on different meanings as we move through the decades, through the generations. Words take on different meanings. Just like you've probably heard me talk about the word virgin. Virgin now means someone who has not had sex. Virgin back 100 million years ago, not 100 million, but a very long time ago, was referring to a woman who owned herself, meaning because generally her family was wealthy in some way, and so she was awarded the opportunity, or not awarded, but given an opportunity other women weren't given, and that was to not be taken by a husband. Most of the time back then, you were sold for 3 cows to a man, and your husband then turned over your ownership as a woman to a man. And so just like the word virgin has changed over the years to meaning that somebody who's sexually never had intercourse, it's confusing to listen to people teach on this subject, right? And we're seeing the widespread confusion around this with witchcraft because there's a lot of voices yelling, and we have this 2-second attention span. And so, we're hearing it wasn't women it wasn't witches you killed, it was women, and it was, these type of things. And it's like, I look into those things. I actually study those things, and I do believe it is quite likely that it wasn't witches that were burned. I believe actually if you were what a witch was before the burning times, you were a prophet, you were a seer, you were a medium and an oracle, and likely had the wisdom to be able to remove yourself so you were not murdered during those times. So then we have to go back to what we're practicing now. A lot of it that is spells is the old pagan folk magic, the old pagan folklore. Everybody in the community during that day and age in Europe, specifically in those European areas where the word witch originated before it spanned across our planet, it was referring to a woman that was an oracle or a seer, from what I can gather. But now when we look up the definition witch, what that definition is showing you is a wise woman, a healer. So what the definition of a witch became through the burning times, just like the word pagan changed, just like the word virgin changed, the word witch changed and became everyone who they were blaming as to be a witch. So the word witch was one thing, and then it took on a different meaning if you look at it the way I'm looking at it. So find the oldest witch recorded. What was she doing? It said really nothing about spells that I can recall in this moment, but that she was being used for her prophetic abilities. Now, when you even look at the origins of the word witch, it comes from Germanic origins. And, you know, there's some really beautiful things that have happened as the witch, you know, because I'm about, as the witch, word witch transformed, and I am about community and bringing people together and not being exclusive, you know, like being open to, you know, not gatekeeping who the witch is. However, because of that, we are continuing to lose who the witch is. And that has always been something that's on my mind constantly, especially with the movement of Christian witchcraft and even the well-intending witches who are like, I'm a devil-worshipping witch, I'm a satanic witch. And it's like, there never was such a thing. And I've already talked about this on several lives, is that the only reason that there is any influence of Christianity in the craft is because it's for any of the pagan magic or the pagan folklore to survive, they had to bring it with them and hide it in the shadows of Christianity. And that's the way it survived. Now, the archetype of the witch has taken on the pagan archetype because there is a different way of living pre-conversion of Christianity and post-conversion of Christianity. And as you can tell, as I'm explaining all of this, you can't get this out in a 2-second post. So what people are doing is they're putting out posts. People are taking a small snippet of it, and over time, everything's changing to where now we're asking ourselves, were the witches really herbalists? Were the witches really midwives? Most likely the answer is yes, because all of the women who lived in Europe before the conversion, they were the medicine women for their family. They were the herbalists, they were the healers. And so the draw for that to come into your life isn't necessarily always the draw to witchcraft that is calling you. It is a draw for you to connect to the earth. Not that that's bad. Like all of those things that the pagans did, I feel are foundational for the craft. I know Wicca feels that way too. That all of those pagan practices are things that were foundational to who the witch was, but yet the witch was it. I wish, I need to think on this so I can get an analogy, but I hope I'm making sense here. And it's like, it's not that a witch isn't practicing all of those pagan things, but those pagan things are bringing you closer to the earth. They're very needed because we are very disconnected from the earth. However, like the witch really was utilized for different abilities than their pagan skills that everybody else had, if that makes sense. So both are valid and important right now, because without the earth and only transcendence, what we got was patriarchy. That's how we got where we are at right now. They made us fear our bodies. They made us fear, as women, our psychic abilities. You know, it was okay for men to have them. If you notice, they didn't go after the magicians or the wizards. There were some men that they pointed the finger at and said, you're a witch, right? They even did it to animals. However, that was the word pagan changing, right? That was the word pagan changing right before our eyes, because pagan just referred to the people in Europe Europe that lived before the conversion and the way they lived close to the earth. It's a very complicated history when you look back at it. I've been thinking a lot lately. I've started to write a book, and I've been thinking a lot about how to get these things across that have taken me years and years of reading and studying and contemplating and realizing there's not a book out there that explains this. There's not a book that clearly explains this, but we can see throughout multiple different books that historians are going to say, well, that's just a book, right? If it's not considered valid by a historian, then it's just a book in someone's opinion. Now, if we're going to go by just knowledge alone and what people learn in school and what historians are able to prove, then we are going to be run over by the billionaires and the elites yet again in this day and age. It'll look different than the burning times, but it's happening right now. It doesn't just happen in 1692. It took hundreds of years of conditioning and programming, and they rooted in patriarchy just in time for a few years later for it to start to blow up, because we're entering now the age of Aquarius. If we leave out the wisdom of those that are trying to share, we are warping our history, and history is important because it's where we came from and understanding how we got here. However, we can't just look at it from whoever decides, the historians are like, this is fact, this is what happened. And it's like, there's a lot of fact that a lot of stuff was swept under the rug. We have no mainstream knowledge of a matriarchy ever being part of our history. And yet, if you read When God Was a Woman, you can see all of the actual proof that no one has validated. And so I keep coming back to this thought since last year of what will be remembered of us today, because we can't even get straight who a witch is. Right now, who was originally a witch was somebody who had oracle abilities that was a female in Europe, right? Because they pointed the finger at healers and herbalists, midwives, and men. Now the witch is a midwife first, a herbalist, a healer, a wise woman, and it's even men. And yet on my posts, like last week, I was having a lot of men on, actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, on FB, on my posts over there, because everything cross posts. They're basically yelling at me saying, why are men not allowed here? And then we have other witches yelling at me for wearing hats and how disgraceful, we might as well paint our face green. And it's like, nobody is taking the time to stop and understand one another. We want your answer in 2 seconds, and what came before us is not going to be explained to you in 2 seconds. You can't drive up to McDonald's, order it, get it, drive away, and have everything you want to know. That it has taken me 20 years to compile in my psyche. And not one of us has all of the answers. So if you are a historian that is so arrogant that you believe you are the only one with truth, then you're not the one I want to look to for wisdom, because I am the witch that is looking for what is hidden. Because what is hidden is where the power is. What is hidden is where the magic lies. And again, witches are oracles, but we have this psychosis, anxiety, all of these things that we are dealing with, depression, are because we've lived in this patriarchal society, which encourages in your churches up and out, up and out. Everybody is in the head, trying to connect to their spiritual abilities. Even in spiritual communities, it's all about the amethyst because they want their psychic abilities, and it's like, most likely what you think are your psychic abilities are not. Maybe they are a little bit, but unless you have gone in and done the body work, why you've realized that we're sick, why we have anxiety and depression, is because we are disconnected from this body, and this body is full of trauma. It is jam-packed with trauma. We don't understand who we are. And that's sad. It's very sad. And it's sad to me that the witch is getting whitewashed yet again. So I'm not saying these things to say that the herbalists and the midwives and the healers are not witches, because that was what I am suggesting is that was a foundational piece of why we actually had witches, was because they lived so close to the earth. That what needed to happen was that they were so close to the earth that once they moved through life challenges, the wisdom that opened up to them, and if you look at Celtic lore, they have this 3 cauldron concept that supposedly the poets and the scribes and the people with inspiration had moved through life challenges and healed to gain wisdom. And they seen wisdom as poetic ability, as prophetic ability. And so if you think about it in the context of living before the times we live in now, the witches actually were probably doing all those things because all of the women did them. They were the herbalists, they were the healers, they were all of those things. But there weren't many women that were wise. But what did wise mean back then? That's why I look to the 3 cauldrons. Because there's so many voices that are yelling. There's Black women saying white women shouldn't be witches. And it's like, European area, Germanic origin is the word of the witch. The first witch we have is the Witch of Endor. That doesn't invalidate that we look at the religion of voodoo, which is in Africa, and there are some very, what we would call today, witchy things. Yet those witchy things are what you would call pagan in Europe, if that makes sense. So I'm just like, I let my mind weave around what is knowledge, and then I let myself make sense of it. And the reason that I do that is because I was raised in the Mormon church and it never made sense to me. And they would say, read the Book of Mormon and read the Bible. And what doesn't fit in the Bible is explained in the Book of Mormon because it shows what was happening in the Americas during whatever was happening over in Jerusalem and Bethlehem in the Middle East. And it never made sense to me. And so for myself, I honestly, like, I know it sounds crass, but I don't give a flying fuck what a historian said is true, because there is more. Not that I don't value their knowledge and what they've learned, right? Because I do learn from what they say, but I don't take what they say as gospel, because I was programmed and raised in a religion that said this is truth. And then when I researched the Bible, I found out the Bible is a bunch of BS. So that's where we are finding ourselves right now, is that we have to be willing to weave the knowledge in with the wisdom. We have to be able to use our critical thinking skills. We have to be willing to have a beginner's mind. We have to be willing to realize that no one is perfect. And that as we women try to heal, if we demonize other women that have harmed us, we are spiritually bypassing the fact that we probably have healed or harmed other women on our path. And that was like last night we did our Ostara gathering for my virtual coven, and there was a story that popped in my mind that I hadn't thought about in a long time. And it was, this woman, my husband's ex-wife, has done a lot to harm me in my life. But I can honestly see her now. Like, she would send her daughters here and say, my mom says you're fat. Like, all of these things throughout my life that would just like, oh, it was such a challenge, right? But when I finally got through that challenge, then I was able to look back and say, actually, I probably planned her to come in my life because she was a mirror of what I grew up in, with the mom and the sisters and the toxicity and an all-girls family I grew up with. And first, I had to learn to overcome the competition, the jealousy, all of the things my husband's ex was mirroring of myself back into her. Once I overcame that and acknowledged that actually it existed in me and I had done those things at some point in my own life, last night I realized like there was this story. So I always look at how mean she was to me, but there was one time that she stood up for me against some man I didn't know. And who's my husband now, and my ex-husband were in the driveway. I was there. Some guy drove up yelling at my husband. I had no idea why then, but he was into some really bad stuff that he now, like, who he was is getting called out. But I didn't know that at that time. So I was completely shell-shocked, taken off guard, and I didn't speak up for myself. And this man was yelling at me, screaming at me, calling me a whore, and I just stood there, and she actually yelled back at him and was like, you don't get to say that. And I've just been thinking about that nonstop since last night, because I'm like, there was that time. And, usually I look at her like she's just this bitch. And it's like, we all have shadow and light. And we need to, as women, stop judging other women and acting like that we've never been a problem to other women. Because they're two sides of the same coin, being a woman. And unfortunately, the shadow has been really toxic for us. But we're not all bad, even if we've done shitty things. I'm sure there's people out there who would say, oh, when Harmony was in her 20s, she did this shitty thing to me. And it's like, does that mean Harmony today is that same person? Do we need to hold that person accountable 20 years later? We will never heal the wound between women if we hold on to our hatred and anger and hold grudges. And that's where doing our own healing allows us to understand where in our life we need healthy boundaries. And when we implement healthy boundaries, we stop telling the same story over and over again. I was talking about playing the victim to like our depression, our anxiety, all of these things, and we just keep healing the same thing over and over again. And it's like, when are we going to walk away from that and say, now I'm on the other side of the anxiety and the depression? It may still be something that rears its ugly head. It does in me now and then, depending on the type of trauma you've experienced. Things will be layered and healed throughout your entire life, but are you going to identify with those labels your whole life? And that is the same thing with the sister wound. Are we going to allow the toxicity to carry on because we decide that because we were harmed by this woman that she is just pure evil? No, but does that mean that we invite somebody into our life that is toxic? No. And that is where the healing, the feminine part of ourselves, is having boundaries and sovereignty. When you are sovereign, you stop blaming everyone else and telling the same story about how this girl sent her daughters over here to say your mom is fat, right? Like, that's the story I told for so long that just broke me. And now I look at it and I'm like, it's time to stop telling that story, because I really don't know who she is. And actually that was I believe those major things in my sovereign ability to navigate this life, I realize I chose these hard challenges and lessons so I could be who I am today. And so, bringing all of this that we've been talking about full circle, the challenges that we are going through today, the reason we need to come to them as with that beginner's mind, with the ability to critically think and to stop the programming of the way we lived in patriarchy, which was one person has the answer. One historian has the answer. One bishop, one church. Everybody's yelling, I'm the true church. I'm a historian. I have the truth of the pagans. And what we are seeing is truth is fickle. It depends on what has been hidden behind the veils of illusion. And we even as spiritual people take on these labels, and I did this, nothing I talk about, you guys, is stuff that I haven't done. So I'm not like pointing the finger at you saying bad witch or anything like that, because I've done these things. If I talk about an unhealed empath, it's because I lived for a period of time as that unhealed empath. Like, I can't sit at my child's basketball game because it's too much energy, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I didn't come here with the ability to be an empath because so I would be able to point out all the toxicity. No. I came here with that ability so that I could feel beyond the veils of illusion. And what we have to critically think about right now is what's being exposed to us on this planet right now has been happening for thousands of years. So if right now you are triggered by seeing the stuff that they are exposing, it's because there's something unhealed, it's filed in the wrong place in your mind, and your mind is feeding your intuition, the story that you watched online, to keep you focused on that rather than what happened to you that's getting triggered from watching that. So it's like that part of you is staying in the unconscious mind, that it's like, we don't want to remember what happened to us when we were 8 years old. So we're going to blame this on our empathic ability, and we're going to stay focused on the fact that we're so empathic that all of this being exposed is crippling us. And it's like, if your empathic abilities were on point, you would have been, and they are on point because of what you are witnessing right now is crippling you. You would have been crippled for what you didn't know why for 100 years before, because this stuff has been happening for hundreds of years. All of your lifetime, these things that are exposed have been happening. Am I making sense? It's only that we are becoming aware, and our ego becoming aware of something that is triggering what is hidden within us. So we haven't yet met the part of us that is actually the ego is protecting. So what is that part of yourself you've been unwilling to talk about? I found the most healing when I could sit in front of my therapist and actually say the things that I had done in my life. I think that's why they have confession, is because it's like when things are trapped inside of you, they get bigger. And when you say them out loud, it's like you're no longer living inauthentically. You've acknowledged that you're not perfect. But the thing is nobody's perfect. And right now, we need to support each other in our healing. There's enough room for all of us women out there right now. We don't need to be screaming to try to be the most knowledgeable witch, or putting down another witch that has a following that intimidates you or you feel jealous of, and so you're going to try to lash out at her when it's just the child within you that was not acknowledged. And it's like, maybe everything you want will be on the other side of you acknowledging that child. But I promise you, by lashing out at me and saying like our witch hats are lame and I don't know what I'm talking about, it's like, that's not going to get you anywhere. Bashing other women and other witches will not get you anywhere. Bringing women together is what needs to happen right now. Everybody's like, we need the matriarchy. And I don't even know if matriarchy is the answer. A new form of matriarchy is what I would like to see, where it honors both the masculine and the feminine, but that we are inviting more feminine leadership roles in our society. So, hi Ricky, my sister's on the live. So it is 11:24. I usually cast a circle when we get to 100K likes. We're only at 60,000. And so I wasn't sure if I was going to cast a circle or even come on today, because I'm not feeling 100%. But wow, I'm just like rambling and talking like I am 100%, huh? So I must have been able to come on here. Crystal, you've been tapping like a fool. I love you. A salt circle, no. So we cast a circle, meaning it's a form of like guided meditation. So there is a circle we cast that is physical in witchcraft when we're doing spells. And we sometimes will use cord, we will use salt, we will use flour, we will use many different things to create an actual physical circle, candles, rocks, stones, wood. And then in that circle, we cast or call in the elements to protect us while we're doing that work, because we're placing ourselves in a liminal space by casting that circle. However, when I cast a circle on my lives, we're casting a circle of protection and empowerment. So we do that in a guided meditation form. This is something I do for myself every day. So most people are always asking me for the spell for protection, and I'm all about that, right? I wear crystals. I love crystals. I use them. Like my kids all have hematite in their car to protect them. However, the best form of protection, just like I was talking earlier, we're focusing too much on the spell work. Not that it's not fun. Women love it. We thrive when we gather together and do craft. However, for those seemingly mundane things like planting something, you make it a spell by the power that is in you. The power that is in us is distorted and warped because we are so wounded and we have so much buried within us. Because we have so much trauma buried within us, we can cast these spells, but because our energetic field is so full of whatever it is it's full of, from you not healing certain things, the spell you're doing can't help but be influenced by that, because the spell is influenced by your energy. And so energy and the elements are everything in witchcraft, and not a lot of people are talking about this. We all have the ability to manipulate energy, but we're all so full of trauma that our manipulating energy, it doesn't always come out the way we hope it would, right? That's why people are on here, tell me how to be rich, and then you'll notice like there's people giving you money spells that are definitely not living a luxurious lifestyle. It's like, why is that? Like, you're teaching people to do the money spell and yet you're not living in abundance. So why is that? And that's because it's not just about the spell. The spell can be just cooking. The spell can be just crafting. For it to be witchcraft, there has to be the elemental forces within you and without you aligning. The only way we can align those to where we are actually being the witch we were meant to be is by healing all of the energy that is not aligned with us from our childhood, from our teenage years, from our early adult years, whatever it is. So chants, yes, chanting can help you raise the energy and unlock trauma in the body, but you're not just going to chant. You know, I love Kuan Yin, I love her mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. But I could sit here and chant all day long, Om Mani Padme Hum, and it's not going to clear my trauma. I can go to a Reiki practitioner and have them do Reiki on me 10 times a week, and they will not heal my trauma. It may give you a few moments of peace and reprieve, but healing the trauma is only work you can do. Only you can cry for you enough to release the energy of pain the child in you has held for so long. And that's why a lot of my work in my witch school classes and stuff is rooted around healing first. And then we go into connecting with the elements. I connect you to the earth first, actually, because the earth is the biggest thing we are disconnected from. So we cast this circle and it opens you up. It brings you to a transcendent space to where wisdom can pour in. And then when you go to sleep tonight, I cast it so that the circle is open but never broken, and that the whatever transcendent wisdom came in today while in this protected space where the elements were holding you, and I call forward deities not to be invoked inside of you, like invoking them in your body, doing some weird trance. We are invoking their power, their energy to come around us with the elements to represent aspects of ourself that maybe we have or have not yet developed that are strengths. So we're held by different versions of ourself is what these deities are doing. And they are holding this energetic space around you. So you're in a completely different world than everyone else. And that's why I cast this circle for myself daily before I get out of bed. And I'm not so dependent on crystals or spells for protection. When I have cast my circle and I am in energetic alignment, I am walking around with an energy that no one can get through. Unless I allow you to. So we're going to cast that circle if you want to be a part of it, because I am not going to be live as long as I have been live. I'm going to end after I cast this circle, actually. So the circle is a guided meditation. If you would want to watch it, you're welcome to just sit and watch. But to be a part of casting the circle, I invite you to find a place that you'll be undisturbed and quiet, maybe even put headphones in, because it's like a guided meditation. And then you tap in the chat, yes, thank you, I accept, I receive. And what that does is let your energy know you are receiving the circle casting that I am offering today. So when I'm casting the circle, I will say, bless us as we call your name, and then I'll say a deity's name. All you have to do is repeat that deity's name 3 times with me after I say their name, and that will also bring that deity's energy forward into your field. I also do not want you to sit with your leg crossed, like I have my legs crossed right now. That blocks your energetic field, so you want to be open. You want your spine to be long from your sit bones all the way to your crown of your head. And this keeps an open channel. You want your palms open. You can be lying down or sitting up. You just can't be hunched over, curled in a ball. You want to be lying flat on your back if you're laying down. And be aware without judging. So listen to the sound of my voice, be fully present. And we are going to go ahead and cast this circle. I'm just going to wait to see for a few moments. I want to see, is there anyone that is wanting me to cast this circle? Because, okay, yes, thank you. I accept, I receive. Haley, Marjorie, okay, you guys are still here. Thank you, thank you. Okay, just wanting to make sure that there are people here who want to do this and you are gonna be following along. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking for a few moments and then end. Crystal, thank you. Unknown, Stephanie, okay. Aaron's here. Beautiful. Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and start. So close your eyes. And find yourself in the darkness, between the darkness and the light. So noticing that when you close your eyes, everything is dark. And now I want you to open your eyes for a moment and notice how everything is light. Now, close your eyes and find yourself in the darkness. So I just want to remind you how peaceful it actually feels to be in the darkness. And yet we like to demonize that word darkness, but there's a lot of peace here when our eyes are closed. And I would like you to, with your eyes closed, bring your internal gaze to your nose. So you're going to move your eyes with your eyes closed, kind of like you're crossing your eyes. Now what this does is activate your third eye. And so while I'm casting the circle today, I would like you to shift back and forth between holding that cross-eyed position with your eyes closed and then letting them set back at neutral for however long feels right. But what this will do is activate your third eye and open up your psyche a little bit, like crack the door to the unconscious mind. So don't do it until you give yourself a headache, but do it until you feel like, oh, I need a little break, and then just take a break. And then when you become aware, cross your eyes again with your eyes closed. Relax your body. Soften your shoulders, soften your jaw, seal your lips, and slowly begin to take a deep breath in. Open your mouth, exhale out. Sealing your lips, inhaling deep. Soften at the top before you exhale. And then exhale. Seal the lips. Slowly pull the air in through your nose. Feel it move through your throat, expanding your lungs, expanding your heart, expanding your rib cage, expanding your belly, expanding your entire body. When you can't take in any more air, I want you to pause here and notice what areas of your body are holding. Being full of life, you are holding, probably in your jaw, your shoulders, your belly, your lower back, your hips, maybe your arms. Soften, keep holding. Part your lips and audibly exhale. Use your abdominal muscles to squeeze out every last drop of air, and then pause when there's no breath left. And then seal your lips and begin to invite the breath in through the nose and out through the nose. As I call forth circles, of light to surround us now, moving north, east, south, west, pulsating light. These circles of light move from the floor beneath you all the way up to your head, and they stop. So circles of light that encompass the entire area around you, but not above or below. Right now, we're focusing on the color of this massive light that is surrounding us like walls of light. And you find yourself at the center of the darkness. The only light you see is the color of the circle around you. I call forth the guardians of the watchtower of the north, south, east, and west to watch over and protect this sacred circle that we cast today across oceans, cities, countries, deserts, mountains, villages. We come together to cast sovereign circles collectively of empowerment and protection. Guardian of the North, keeper of earth. Keeper of earth. I invoke the elements and the spirits of earth to join us now. Keeper of the keys, keeper of the crossroads, keeper of the turning points in our life. She who arrives on the darkest days with a flicker of light to remind us that we are not lost, but on the path to illuminating what has been hidden. She's reminding us today that we came here to illuminate what is hidden. In our own ability to illuminate what is hidden within ourselves, we will be able to move through our lives and grow like the desert rose. As the world around us is illuminating what is hidden, the most vile and disgusting darkness will be unveiled, and we will continue to thrive like the rose that blooms under the most harshest circumstances, pioneering a new way. Bless us as we call your name. Hecate, 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 Hecate. Guardian of the south, northeast, keeper of the rising sun and the sacred wells, she arrives today with her candle of hope in the center of a circle that no one can see because there's only pure darkness, and her with her candle of hope. The sounds of trickling water from a nearby well. She offers the water from the sacred wells to your throat, and your heart, and your belly. Bless us as we call your name. Bridget, 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 Bridget. Guardian of the east, keeper of air, I invoke the elements and the spirit of air to join us now. Keeper of 10,000 spells, keeper of 10,000 names hidden within the expressions of thousands of deities, goddess of transformation, putting the pieces of the puzzle back together, of making it all make sense and never giving up. This deity is awakening the black angelic wings that she holds in her shape-shifting ability to hold you as you bring the pieces of the puzzle together of this earth life, of this incarnation that we now find ourselves living. Nothing is changing, she reminds us. Only we are being made aware of truth. And this is the gift that she brings us. Piece of the puzzle, pieces of the puzzle, bringing them together so that we can understand who we are. And bless us as we call your name, Isis, 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 Isis. Guardian of the Southeast, keeper of sovereignty, awakening the songs of the Divine Mother. Sing through us, reminding us that our voices, no matter how we judge them when we sing, can heal us. She's asking us to hum, to sing, and to feel our bodies vibrate. The sound of our voice heals us. She says, remember the music that you listen to is creating the vibrational flow and frequency in which you live in. Sing with the birds that are awakening early this year. They're here to remind you of new life. Where the waters flood, you are having one final cleanse from that which no longer serves you. Allow the earth to take her processes, to heal herself without your judgments. Accept what is given as a blessing. See beyond humanity's judgments. When the heat and the fire comes early, it awakens new life and burns away darkness. The waters clear the way when the winds whip and tornadoes blow. Spirit is speaking. Listen. Bless us as we call your name. Rhiannon, 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 Rhiannon. Guardian of the South, keeper of fire, keeper of fire, keeper of fire. We invoke the spirits and the elements of fire. As we welcome the season of fire, the astrological new year, the Queen of the Fae arrives to join us this day, awakening us with love as the way. She sees your heart, she sees your pain. She opens a pathway for you to be all of who you are, to burn away what no longer serves you, and to warm your cauldrons with potions of love. She reminds you that there is both love, beauty, rage, and destruction within the fire, connecting to all the aspects of fire allows you to see the Fae as no longer seeing them as the tricksters, but the protectors of the Earth Mother, the trailblazers of paths that we cannot see in our Earth realm, but open up new dimensions of consciousness. Bless us as we call your name, Anya, 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 Anya. Guardian of the Southwest, keeper of mystery, she who has walked the shadows, misjudged, demonized, just as the witches, for a millennia, a lifetime, or 2 or 3, and so many more lifetimes, where only a few were willing to carry her message forward, to feel her truth as they walked her trails and sat in her caves. Just as the witch, she awakens today, more in alignment with who she really is, but still distortion lies within her interpretation. Do not let other people's interpretations of who you are define you. She reminds you that the power is within you. Awaken the elements behind your eyes. Cast without spells or wands or brooms. Cast with the energy you hold within you. This is what is awakening within you. Be unafraid of going toe-to-toe with your own demons, and you will be unafraid of going toe-to-toe with the demons of the world that are being expressed and exposed now. You will remain protected and unaffected. This is the key. Bless us as we call your name. Mary Magdalene, Mary Magdalene, Mary Magdalene, Mary Magdalene. Guardian of the West, keeper of water, I invoke the elements and the spirits of water to join us now. Keeper of the cauldron, keeper of transformation, of shape-shifting, of creation, of alchemy. She awakens the waterfall of light that exists within you, holding your purpose. The waterfall never ceases to fall. No matter what comes through its waters, it just keeps moving forward, as will you. She reminds you to drink water, to place your hands in natural sources of water, place your feet in natural sources of water, wash your body in rainwater, wash your hair in rainwater. Allow the water to be a gift of cleansing, of tears that heal you from the inside out, so that you will no longer define yourself as the broken one. Bless us as we call your name. Caradwin, 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 Caradwin. Guardian of the Northwest, weaver of our sacred circle, queen of witches, daughter of Diana, queen of the oppressed, she who has gifted the witches the 13 powers. She reminds you to look closely at those 13 powers of the witch, as they are needed to heal you from the inside out, to protect you from forces of evil around you. Connect to the planets. Heal. Feel. As you knot your shoes, remember the intention that pours through you is knotting itself into your life. Study the 13 powers, all of them, not only the ability to curse, as in these times it is more important to cast out Blythe, to cast out the evil entities that have been created and grown on this planet, not by you, but by outside sources that wish domination and control. Bless us as we call your name, Aradia, 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 Aradia. From beneath us, we call forth the presence of our loving Earth Mother to rise up and support us, to fill our feet with the minerals of the earth, the nourishment that sustains all life. We call forward into our physical body, taking up any space, nooks and crannies where trauma does not exist, so that we can heal while feeling nourished. She sustains us no matter how long we have ignored her, but her calls will be louder the longer we ignore her. She will bring forth the floods. She will bring forth tornadoes, hurricanes, and earthquakes when we do not listen. But she does not do so out of anger and rage. She does so with purpose. The water will cleanse you. The spirit of air will give you messages from the divine. The fire will burn away darkness and nourish what feeds the spirit of your soul. We call forth the ancestors, the indigenous ancestors of each person who is partaking in the circle casting, who walk with us in a good way, who care for the rising consciousness of humanity and the care of this earth. We call you forward. We honor you for the path that you walked. We call forward the ancestors of our DNA in our sovereign circles who walk with us in a good way. We do this collectively but sovereignly. The ancestors we call forward are those who've walked the path before you that have influenced your bloodline the most heavily. We call forth the Fae, the elementals and the gnomes, the protectors and the guardians of our earth and our bodies. We call forward the star brothers and sisters, the planetary alignments, planetary homes, the stars, and all the other seeds of souls that await to inhabit this earth plane, this earth school. Pour your wisdom upon us as you witness our journey. Hold space from the transcendent as we lift this circle up, bringing your hands to heart center. We call forth the child within you to be here at the front of your sacred heart, with the eyes shimmering in all your brilliance. The Phoenix child who exists within you, awakening you to how your purpose blossoms in every aspect of your life, and not just in one aspect. We call forth the I Am presence sovereignly as a collective. In our sacred circle, we call our I Am presence to step forward now. And as we do so, we lift the circle up, up, up to the 7th and 8th plane of consciousness where divine knowing and miracles take place. And as we do so, we ask that the circle remain open until each individual sovereignly lies their head down to rest tonight, when the circle will open and never be broken. As above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. This circle is now sealed. It is done, it is done, it is done, and so it is. Blessed be. Deep breath in. Deep breath in. As you exhale out, gently blink your eyes open, coming back into this time and space. Thank you for being part of this circle casting on this beautiful Sunday. Blessed be. I would love to hear any colors you experienced, anything that you might have felt by keeping that cross-eyed position with your eyes closed that awakens your psychic senses, your third eye. Blessed be, Princess Dragon. Blessed be. Thank you all for being here and joining me. Clear light blue, blessed be. Thank you. Thank you guys for staying here the whole time I cast that circle. That's really beautiful. Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you guys for your gifts. Thank you for hearting the live. Thank you for sharing the colors like violet and white. If you haven't followed me, please follow me. My circles felt light, vibrant green today. Send the wind flowing through my hair. I love that. Electricity through my legs. Love that. Mahalo. Blessed be. Thank you for the gifts. If you guys haven't followed me, follow me. Please go check out my witch school. We have had a few more signups to Practical Magic this week. So if you are wanting to go to Practical Magic, thank you, Erin. Thank you, Marjorie, for all the roses. Make sure you reserve your space. There's still a couple more months that we can start payment plans, but the retreat will be here before we know it this October. So if you want to join us, remember all the videos you're seeing on my page are 90%, I would say 95% of the retreat is those videos being recorded. We only spend 5% of the retreat actually doing a photo shoot. Everything you are seeing is videoed actual ceremonies. So the photo shoots we do is just mostly so the women will have pictures to take home. But the videos you're seeing are actually videos of ceremonies and rituals. So I had someone ask me this week, like, is this retreat just about taking videos and pictures? And it's not. That's only we have one evening after late afternoon where we take an hour and a half approximately to do group pictures and individual pictures. But everything you're seeing, I have a photographer who comes to the retreat and someone that comes in videos, and they're just following us around the entire retreat, videoing and taking questions, or not taking questions. I seen the word question and it came out of my mouth, but videoing actually what we're doing. So everything you're seeing in those videos on my page are actual ceremonies and rituals that we do at our retreat. So we have a red tent ceremony, we have a Chernips ritual, we do yoni steaming, we do so much. We do Ritual of the Sphinx, we do spell work, we do herbalism, we have midnight margaritas, we focus on sisterhood. Because it's at Samhain, we have an ancestral altar that we bring our ancestors' photos for to be a part of. So I want you to know that our retreats are not just a photo shoot opportunity. They're an opportunity for witches to come together and be a part of a coven. And the way that we show witches what we are doing and advertise so that we can invite more witches to come is by having a beautiful witch photographer. She's pagan, and Ashley Darling is her name, and she runs around and beautifully photographs us as we're doing these things. So it's not like we're always 100% of the time posing for pictures. But we would love for you to come and be a part of that. If you haven't signed up yet, it's going to be in October around Samhain. And also we have our witch school with tons of classes to support you that are all online, pre-recorded. So go check them out. Thank you for being here. Thank you to my moderators, Marjorie, Haley, Aaron, anybody else here who was modding that I might not have known. I appreciate you keeping the chat a safe space. Eclectic Goddess, thank you for being here every week. So it's in Arizona, Sedona, Arizona. There's a link in my bio. It'll say it's taking you to an outside source. That outside source is just my link tree. It's safe, and it will take you to the pages for the retreat. So yes, Margie, I'm gonna go get some rest and some water. Blessed be. I will most likely be here next Sunday, but possibly not. So keep that in mind. If I'm not here next Sunday, I will be here the following Sunday. So blessed be everyone. Have a happy Sunday, and I'll see you next week.